killed Elvis Presley?
No, drugs had nothing to do with his death.
Absolutely nothing.
Nothing. That was proven and shown in my book.
For nearly 50 years, the world thought it knew everything about Elvis Presley's tragic death. Then scientists discovered a forgotten DNA sample hidden in a Memphis freezer since 1977. When they tested it with new technology in 2025, the results revealed shocking secrets about the king's body. Could Elvis's genes explain everything? The king's final resting place. August 16, 1977, Elvis Presley was found unresponsive on the bathroom floor of his beloved Graceland mansion in Memphis, Tennessee. He was only 42 years old. The king of rock and roll was gone, and the world would never be the same. At the foot of his bed that terrible morning stood Dr. George Nicopolis. Everyone called him Dr. Nick. He had been Elvis's personal physician for years. He knew the singer better than almost anyone. Dr. Nick paced back and forth, his mind racing. He had watched Elvis struggle with mysterious health problems for so long. The constant exhaustion, the confusion and the pain that seemed to come from nowhere. Something had always felt wrong, deeply wrong, but the medical technology of the 1970s just couldn't figure it out. Before Elvis's body left Graceland, Dr. Nick made a decision that would change history. He collected biological samples, a tiny bit of tissue from hair, just enough for future testing. He carefully labeled a small bottle with a date and Elvis's full name, Elvis Aaron Presley. Then he wrote a note on a scrap of paper, "For future health research, handled with extreme care." Why would he do this? Dr. Nick had a feeling. Call it medical instinct. He believed that someday, when science caught up, someone would finally understand what had really been happening inside Elvis's body, what had made him so sick, why he struggled so much in his final years. Elvis was first buried at Forest Hill Cemetery, but thousands of fans showed up every single day. The crowds became too much. His family decided to move him to Graceland, to the meditation garden where he could rest in peace, surrounded by family. The grave became one of the most visited sites in America. Millions of people came to pay their respects to the legend who had changed music forever. But questions never stopped. Conspiracy theories sprouted like weeds. Some people claimed Elvis faked his death. Others said there was a cover-up. The mystery surrounding that August day haunted fans for decades. Meanwhile, that small bottle with Dr. Nick's handwritten label sat forgotten in a freezer in Memphis. Nobody remembered it was there. Years passed. The bottle remained frozen, waiting for the day when science would finally be ready to reveal the truth about what really happened to the king of rock and roll. But hidden in that freezer, a secret sample waited to tell the truth. The vault that held the truth. Deep in the basement of an old brick building in Memphis, a freezer hummed quietly. It had been humming for 46 years. Inside that freezer, hidden among hundreds of other old medical samples, sat a small bottle. The label was faded and worn, but you could still read one name clearly, Elvis Aaron Presley. Dr. Patricia Chen could not believe what she was holding. Her hand shook as she picked up the tiny frozen bottle. This was real. This was actually Elvis's DNA. The sample had been sitting in that freezer since August 16, 1977, the exact day Elvis died. Nobody had touched it. Nobody had even remembered it existed. How did it get there? Old medical records told the story. Dr. Nick, Elvis's doctor, had sent the sample just days after Elvis passed away. He wanted scientists to study it someday. He hoped future doctors might figure out what had been wrong with his famous patient. Next to the bottle was an old piece of paper. The edges were torn and yellow with age. The handwriting was barely readable, but the message was clear. For future health research, handled with extreme care. Over the years, that building had changed hands 3 different times. 4 different groups of scientists had worked in that basement laboratory. Researchers had opened that freezer thousands of times, But nobody ever noticed the small bottle pushed to the very back. Nobody knew they were standing next to one of the most important medical samples in American history. Dr. Chen found it completely by accident. Her university had started a new project. They wanted to study the DNA of famous Americans. They called it Genetic Portraits, Historical American Icons. The goal was simple. Look at the biology of important people and understand how their genes made them who they were. The research team asked for access to every old medical sample stored in Tennessee. They wanted to see what was available. An intern was sorting through boring inventory lists when something caught her eye. There was a reference to something called Presley E cardiac study materials. When they realized what they had found, the entire laboratory went silent. For 5 whole minutes, nobody spoke. Nobody moved. They just stared at the tiny tube that held the genetic code of the king himself. But having Elvis's DNA and actually being allowed to test it were two completely different things. The hard part was just beginning. When the tests finally began, nobody expected what they would find. The battle for permission. The Presley estate said no. Then they said no again and again and again. Dr. Chen and her team wrote careful letters explaining why this research mattered. They made phone calls. They tried to set up meetings. Every single time the answer was the same. A polite but very firm rejection. The Presley family wanted nothing to do with this DNA testing. For 18 long months, the scientists kept trying. They hired lawyers. They wrote more letters. They explained that this research could help people understand Elvis better. It could even help other families with similar health problems. Nothing worked. The estate kept refusing. Why were they so protective? It was not just about privacy. People close to the family started whispering. They said the Presleys were afraid. Afraid of what the DNA might reveal. Afraid of secrets that multiple generations had kept buried. Afraid of truths that might destroy the carefully built story of Elvis's life. Some family members worried the tests would expose their own health problems. If Elvis had inherited deadly diseases, then his children and grandchildren might have them too. Did they really want the whole world knowing about their genetic vulnerabilities? Finally, in late 2024, something changed. The estate agreed, but they had strict conditions. Very strict conditions. Every single researcher had to sign huge stacks of legal papers, pages and pages of documents. They promised to keep everything secret. Absolutely everything. The data had to be coded. Names had to be removed. Nobody could talk about the research to anyone outside the team. No leaks, no hints, no clues. The research had to happen behind locked doors. Security cameras watched every single test. All the results were encrypted and stored on computers that had no internet connection at all. Even people working on the same team could only whisper to each other about what they were finding. The Presley estate kept one final rule. Nothing could be published. Nothing could be released. Not one single word could go public until the family personally read and approved every detail. The scientists agreed to everything. They had no choice. This was their only chance to unlock the mystery of Elvis Presley's DNA. The team moved the precious sample to a secure facility. It looked more like a bank vault than a laboratory. They set up their equipment. They prepared their tests. Everything was ready. On a cold morning in early 2025, they finally began the analysis. Dr. Chen carefully placed the sample into the testing machine. Her heart was pounding. After nearly 50 years, Elvis's DNA was about to tell its story. But this genetic curse did not stop with Elvis. The blood construct of a legend. Sarah Mitchell stared at her computer screen in wonder. Elvis's family tree was spread out in front of her. It told an amazing story. Elvis came from many different places. His ancestors were from Scotland and Ireland. Some were Cherokee people who lived in Tennessee long before anyone called it Tennessee. Elvis was not just a boy from a small town. He was like America itself. Many different backgrounds mixed together into one special person. But his family carried more than just musical talent in their blood. They also carried serious health problems, problems that passed from parents to children to grandchildren. Their hearts often failed when they were still young. Their blood pressure climbed too high. They developed diabetes. Generation after generation struggled with the same diseases. Elvis's grandfather died at only 46 years old. His heart just gave out. His mother Gladys was sick all the time. Doctors could never figure out exactly what was wrong with her. She suffered for years before she died. The Presley family was special in two ways. They had amazing gifts, but they also had terrible diseases hiding in their genes. Dr. Mitchell pointed at something incredible on her screen. Elvis had genes like Olympic athletes, like world-class dancers. This explained so much. His unbelievable energy, how he could perform for hours and hours without getting tired. He moved on stage with perfect control. He had strength that seemed almost magical. But those same genes that made him so strong also caused serious problems. His body burned through energy incredibly fast, like a fire that never stops burning. He could not rest. He could not slow down. Eventually, he needed pills just to keep his body functioning. The scientists found something else troubling. Elvis's genes made him more likely to become dependent to certain substances. His mind never rested, never relaxed, never found peace. He felt emotions much more strongly than most people do. Everything hit him harder. Joy felt bigger. Sadness felt deeper. Pain felt sharper. Dr. James Wu studied the DNA with a mixture of respect and sadness. Elvis's incredible creativity was not just from practice. It was not just luck. It was actually built into his biology. The genes that control feelings and moods in his brain were different from most people's brains. Music was not just something Elvis enjoyed doing. It was literally part of his DNA, built into every single cell of his body. The researchers discovered more troubling patterns. Elvis had genes that made him feel everything more deeply than other people. He was naturally restless, always searching for something he could never quite find. But his greatest gifts were also his deadliest curse. When science met the king, the clock showed 3:47 in the morning when Dr. Patricia Chen saw something impossible on her screen. She had not slept in almost 20 hours. Her tired eyes could barely focus anymore, but what she was looking at made her suddenly wide awake. She gasped so loudly that the sound bounced off the walls of the quiet lab. She needed to be certain. She ran the entire test over again from the beginning. When the computer finished, the answer had not changed. Elvis had an extremely unusual genetic flaw, a mistake in something scientists call the SCN5A gene. This particular flaw shows up in only 1 out of 10,000 people. It seems like such a tiny error, but it was absolutely lethal. This single change in his genetic blueprint created a serious problem with his heart. The flaw triggered a condition called long QT syndrome. Put simply, it meant Elvis's heart could quit working at any moment without giving any signs. First, imagine a light being switched off instantly. Everything is normal one moment, complete shutdown the next. Dr. Marcus Rodriguez specializes in hearts and how genes affect them. When he examined what the tests revealed about Elvis, he recognized the pattern immediately. He explained that doctors see this exact same genetic mistake in young sports players who drop dead during games. These athletes look completely fine, strong, and healthy. Then suddenly their hearts fail. Nobody sees it coming. Nothing can be done to stop it. Once it happens, no treatment works. This finding finally explained things about Elvis's death that never made sense before. For almost half a century, everyone focused on prescription medications and how he lived. People blamed him for his own problems. They said his choices killed him. But the DNA proved something very different. A killer had been lurking inside his body since birth. From his very first breath, Elvis's heart was secretly dangerous. Every show he performed, every sleepless night, every stressful moment, All of it put terrible pressure on a heart that was already broken at the genetic level. Those flashy costumes, those powerful performances, the crowds of screaming fans, everything pushed his fragile heart closer to giving out. The scientists were not finished discovering Elvis's secrets. They examined even deeper parts of his genetic code. They studied mitochondrial DNA. This special genetic information only comes from your mother. Gladys gave it directly to Elvis. What they found was heartbreaking. A problem in the MTAP6 gene. This meant the cells in Elvis's body could not make energy properly. Imagine trying to drive a car with a damaged engine. It keeps sputtering and dying no matter how hard you try. 3 deadly mutations created a perfect genetic storm. The perfect storm. Each one of these genetic problems was serious on its own, but doctors knew that people could survive with just one of these mutations. They could live fairly normal lives with careful monitoring and the right treatment. Some people with long QT syndrome live into old age if they avoid stress and take medication. Some people with mitochondrial problems learn to manage their energy levels. Some people with the dopamine gene variation find healthy ways to channel their need for excitement. But Elvis did not have just one mutation. He had all 3. And when these 3 genetic flaws came together in one person, they created something catastrophic. A perfect storm of biology working against itself. Think about what his body was dealing with every single day. The heart mutation meant sudden death could happen at any moment. His heart was like a bomb that stress could set off. The mitochondrial problem meant his body was constantly starving for energy it could not produce. He felt exhausted down to his bones. And the dopamine variation meant his brain was wired to seek more and more stimulation. He could never feel satisfied, never feel calm, never feel at peace. Now add fame on top of all that. Add the pressure of being Elvis Presley. Add sold-out concerts. Add screaming fans. Add the demand to always be perfect, always be the king, always perform like nobody else could. His body was drowning. The prescription medication that eventually killed him were not about getting high or escaping reality. They were about survival, pure and simple survival. The pills gave him the energy his broken cells could not make. They calmed the constant storm in his brain. They helped his damaged system function just enough to get through one more show, one more day, one more performance. The restlessness everyone saw in Elvis was not a personality flaw. It was genetic. The paranoia he felt in his later years was not just stress. It was his dopamine receptors failing. The desperate way he searched for meaning and love was not emotional weakness. It was his brain chemistry crying out for balance it could never find. A former bodyguard once remembered Elvis talking about feeling like he was burning from the inside, like there was a fire in his body that never went out. Everyone thought he was being dramatic, using colorful language to describe stress or exhaustion. But the DNA tests proved he was telling the literal truth. His body was consuming itself, burning through resources faster than it could replace them. Elvis was not weak. He was not lazy. He was not just another celebrity who could not handle fame. He was fighting a war against his own biology every single day. And for 42 years, somehow, impossibly, he kept winning. But this genetic curse did not stop with Elvis. The family connection nobody saw coming. January 23, 2023. The news hit the world like a thunderbolt. Lisa Marie Presley was dead. She collapsed at her home in California. Paramedics rushed her to the hospital, but it was too late. Cardiac arrest. Her heart simply stopped beating. She was only 54 years old. When the genetic research team heard the news, they sat in complete silence. They had been studying her father's DNA for months. Now they were staring at their computer screens with a horrible sense of recognition. The pattern was impossible to ignore. Father and daughter, separated by 46 years, connected by the same deadly genetic thread. Lisa Marie had struggled with heart problems for years. Medical records showed she had complained about chest pains and irregular heartbeats. Doctors had treated her, But nobody understood the full picture. Nobody knew about the SCN5A mutation hiding in her DNA. The same mutation that killed her father was almost certainly inside her too. But the tragedy went even deeper. 3 years before Lisa Marie died, her son Benjamin took his own life. He was only 27 years old. While his death was ruled a suicide, people who knew him said he had always struggled with a terrible restlessness, an inability to find peace, a feeling that something was always wrong inside him. The same feelings Elvis had described throughout his life. Scientists began calling it the Presley signature, a unique combination of genetic markers that appeared again and again in family members. The heart vulnerability, the metabolic struggles, the dopamine receptor variation that brought both incredible talent and unbearable torment. It was not just Elvis. It was a legacy written in chromosomes, passed down like family photos or jewelry, beautiful and dangerous at the same time. Researchers started mapping the family tree more carefully. They found pattern after pattern. Many Presley relatives died young. They struggled with weight that would not stay stable. They dealt with constant exhaustion that doctors could not explain. Their hearts gave out too soon. The genetic markers were everywhere. Now the scientists faced a troubling question. Riley Keough was Lisa Marie's daughter, Elvis's granddaughter. She was 35 years old and seemingly healthy. But did she carry these same deadly mutations? Did she have the right to not know? Should someone tell her? Could knowing save her life? Or would it just fill her remaining years with fear and dread? The Presley family split apart over these questions. Some relatives wanted complete honesty. They believed knowledge could save lives. Genetic testing could catch problems early. Treatment could begin before disaster struck. Other family members felt violated. They said this was grave robbing dressed up in white lab coats, a violation of privacy that should not cross the line of death. But then came a discovery that changed everything. The sample that didn't match. It was a normal Tuesday afternoon when Dr. Patricia Chen noticed something wrong. She was running routine verification tests on the DNA sample, double-checking the data to make sure everything was accurate. But the numbers on her computer screen did not look right. Not right at all. She blinked hard, rubbed her tired eyes, adjusted her glasses. Maybe she was just seeing things. Maybe she needed sleep. She ran the test again, then a fourth time. The answer never changed. It stayed stubbornly, impossibly wrong. The DNA from the 1977 sample did not match Elvis Presley's family members the way it should. The mitochondrial DNA was off. This is the genetic material that passes directly from mother to child without changing. It should have been a perfect match to Gladys Presley's DNA. But it was not. The pieces were similar, but not identical. Like a puzzle piece that almost fits, but has slightly wrong edges. Dr. James Wu spent 6 straight hours staring at the data. He was completely confused. Either their expensive equipment was broken, or something very strange was hidden in this DNA. Something nobody had expected. The team checked everything twice, then 3 times. They tested their machines with samples they knew were correct. Everything worked perfectly. They sent portions of the Elvis sample to 3 different laboratories across the country. Every single lab came back with the same confusing answer. The DNA in that bottle was close to Elvis Presley's. Close enough to be a relative, but not close enough to actually be Elvis himself. Dr. Rodriguez analyzed the results with growing concern. The genetic similarity was about 94%. This matched what you would expect from a cousin or an uncle, not from the person himself. The shocking truth was staring them in the face. This DNA was not Elvis's. The laboratory exploded into chaos. Scientists argued in emergency meetings that stretched past midnight. Some insisted the sample must have been labeled wrong almost 50 years ago. Maybe Dr. Nick grabbed the wrong bottle in the confusion after Elvis died. Maybe someone at the hospital made a mistake. Others suggested that 46 years in a freezer could have damaged the DNA badly. Maybe contamination from other samples had mixed in over the decades. Maybe the degradation was just worse than they thought possible. But a small group of researchers began whispering a terrifying question that nobody wanted to say out loud. What if this means something else entirely? What if the sample really did come from the grave at Graceland, but the body buried there was never Elvis Presley at all? The truth was stranger than anyone imagined. The truth buried in the code. 3 months passed in confusion and doubt. The scientific team was stuck. Their data made no sense. The media was starting to ask questions. Conspiracy theorists were having a field day. Then a package arrived from Switzerland. Inside was a brand new machine, a fourth-generation DNA sequencer, the most advanced genetic testing equipment in the world. It had just been invented. Only a handful existed on the entire planet. Dr. Chen opened the wooden crate with trembling hands. This machine was their last hope, their final chance to find out what was really going on. The new technology worked completely differently than the old machines. The older equipment had to break DNA into tiny fragments and read them separately, like tearing up a letter and trying to understand it piece by piece. But this new sequencer could read entire strands of DNA all at once, without cutting them, without breaking them apart. Even better, it could tell the difference between DNA that was damaged by time and DNA that was genuinely different. It could see past the fog. It could read through the mistakes created by decades of freezing and thawing. Most importantly, it could detect epigenetic markers. These are special chemical tags attached to DNA that show how genes were turned on or off during a person's lifetime. Dr. James Wu carefully loaded the Presley sample into the machine early one freezing February morning. The analysis would take 72 hours, 3 full days of processing. Nobody on the team went home. They took turns napping on uncomfortable couches in the break room. They survived on vending machine coffee and stale sandwiches. Everyone took shifts watching the progress bar crawl slowly across the screen. When the results finally appeared, the room went completely silent. The first thing the advanced sequencer proved was identity, beyond any shadow of doubt. The DNA belonged to Elvis Aaron Presley, not a cousin, not a mix-up, not contamination, not a body double, Elvis himself. The problems the old technology found were exactly what Dr. Wu had suspected. Artifacts created by decades of shadows and errors that the primitive equipment could not separate from real genetic information. The new machine saw right through all of it, like cleaning a dirty window and finally seeing clearly. Every single genetic marker matched perfectly. The maternal line from Gladys, the paternal markers from Vernon. Everything lined up exactly as it should. It was definitely, absolutely, 100% Elvis Presley in that sample. The relief in the room lasted about 30 seconds. Then the advanced machine kept analyzing, and what it revealed next was far darker than anyone had imagined. Elvis was not dependent. He was fighting his own biology. The legacy rewritten. The epigenetic markers told a story that broke hearts. These chemical tags on Elvis's DNA were like scars, permanent records of the trauma his body had endured. Dr. Rodriguez stared at the screen with her face completely pale. She had seen epigenetic damage before in her career, but nothing like this. Nothing even close. The patterns on Elvis's genes matched what scientists normally see in 3 types of people: combat veterans with severe PTSD, prisoners who spent years in solitary confinement, survivors of extended torture. The chemical fingerprints were identical. Elvis Presley's DNA carried pain that went beyond normal human suffering. His cortisol genes were completely out of control. Cortisol is the stress hormone. In healthy people, it rises when danger appears, then falls back down when the danger passes. But Elvis's system never came back down, never relaxed, never reset. His body was locked in permanent survival mode, flooded with stress chemicals 24 hours a day for years and years. His immune system genes were switched off, shut down by exhaustion and constant anxiety. The inflammation markers throughout his body were catastrophically high. His DNA showed he was living with chronic pain in every cell. Even his dopamine genes, the ones responsible for feeling pleasure and happiness, showed signs of complete depletion. They had been drained empty. The weight gains and losses that everyone criticized made perfect sense now. His genes that control hunger and metabolism were damaged from years of yo-yo dieting and stimulant medications. His body had completely lost the ability to regulate food, energy, or fat storage. The transformation from the lean young man of the 1950s to the bloated figure of the 1970s was not about willpower or laziness. It was genetic expression gone haywire. Most heartbreaking were the loneliness markers. Recent science has proven that isolation can actually change your genes, particularly genes involved in immune function and stress response. Elvis's DNA showed patterns identical to people locked away from all human contact. Despite being surrounded by people constantly, despite millions of fans who loved him, Elvis was profoundly and biologically alone. The prescription medication that ended his life on August 16, 1977, were not recreational. They were not about getting high. They were desperate attempts to force a broken system to keep functioning, to quiet the pain, to create the energy his damaged cells could not produce, to survive just one more day. Elvis did not fail at being human. He succeeded at being superhuman for as long as his body could possibly endure. 42 years of fighting a war against his own DNA. And somehow, impossibly, he gave the world magic anyway.